Hi, y'all. Jennifer Leday here. Well, since pivoting, adapting, rebuilding, and reimagining have been constant these past few months, I wanted to bring you some leadership inspiration and insights by taking the pulse of some really smart, savvy, and sometimes sassy women leaders. In this series, you'll hear what they're doing and maybe even pick up some lessons and tips on what you can do and how you can excel in this wild new world of work. Stay tuned. With me today, I'm delighted to have Alli McEntyre Gaharin. So welcome, Alli.
Thank you.
We're talking to those smart, savvy, and sometimes, maybe most of the times, sassy women leaders. And what we wanted to do today is, Alli, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about your role and what you do, and maybe what you like best about the work that you do.
Yep. Thank you. And good to see your face,
Yay.
Even though we're far away.
You, I know.
I work at Comexposium, which is an event organizer out of Paris, France. They have events all over the world, or we do rather. Events in China, obviously, were affected the first, and then it sort of worked its way to our European events, and then it worked its way to our U.S. events. And I would say U.S. event organizers perhaps dealt with it a little more slowly than the rest of the world, maybe because the urgency was there. It was a new thing, but as you can imagine, event organizers have been hurt probably right up there with travel and table restaurants in terms of what we do for a living is bring people face to face, and as you said, you can't do that with a mask. It's hard to do. So it's been a really challenging few months for sure.
Yeah. So you're working from home as opposed to, were you going into an office, or you were working remotely?
So we, as of mid-March, we all started working from home. Again, China earlier than that, and Paris earlier than in the U.S., but in the U.S. we started working from home in mid-March.
Yeah.
We're now back in the office, which you can see from my lovely fluorescent lights here. So we have the option to work from home or come into the office. I'd say about half of us are here. And again, normally in this, so I'm in an office now, but when we're in public spaces, we're all masked.
Yeah. So, and I'm just curious, it interests me, how is it, you've got some in the office, some not. How challenging, or how are you dealing with the challenge of communicating with everybody?
It's really interesting because I worked from home for most of my career, but when you're an at-home company, you hire people that are at-home workers. So it's kind of what you build into your interview process. It's been interesting here because all of a sudden you have a lot of people that had an office. We're used to going into an office that are dumped now at home. So it was stressful. The work from home period was stressful. And now I find we're in a different sort of situation where we are, when you have half, it's amazing. You need to almost communicate. Well, you and I have talked about this before, but when you have mobile workforces, you have to communicate louder and more frequently. But now that we have half and half, it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep both sides informed. You know, like today we had a Zoom call. Half of the people were on the Zoom, half of the people were in the conference room. It's just a little clunky. So we're just figuring it out. I've never been in this situation before. So it's a little tough.
Well, and that's, and the good news is that you will figure it out, right? We always do. Necessity is the mother of invention. And so, you know, hopefully there will be some improvements as a result of all of this, with learning as we go. And I mean, that's the best we can do. You know, you do the best.
And this is only our second week in the office. So we're absolutely, you know, figuring it out as we go. Having some meetings outside for those people that aren't comfortable. So tomorrow we have a marketing meeting. We really need to be together. Zoom, I think there's a lot of Zoom fatigue. You really need to be together to get those creative juices flowing a little bit. So we're thinking about doing it outside, a picnic style. So, which I think will be kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you have better weather than what we're supposed to have.
It's so hot, but not Louisiana hot.
Not Louisiana. Ain't nothing Louisiana hot but Louisiana heat. I tell you what, girl. Oh, it's hot. During this whole time, none of us chose to go through this, of course. But what I've been finding is that it gave us a little bit of time to kind of reassess a little bit and look at the way we work, the way we lead. What have you learned about yourself in all of this? Have you had any little aha moments?
Well, I think for me, having a mobile teams for so long, I didn't realize how much I liked being in the office in my new role. It's just it's so nice to be together. Not all the time. But we get, it feels different. So it made me realize, I've kind of been missing this. So it's good to be back in the office. And then as soon as I got back into the office, then we had COVID that we were working with. But I think, so I learned that actually I like an office environment, which I wouldn't normally have said prior to COVID. I didn't realize how much I liked it. I think what I learned, the biggest lesson is that I need to be more patient because every day of every week during this crisis has been a different answer. So I want to rush decisions. I do not like the gray area. Speed, I value above all things, I've realized. And that's not wise when you're in this situation, because every decision that you make changes the next day. So fortunately, I have a very good manager who's a lot more patient than I am, and is like, do not rush these decisions. They are not going to be wise decisions at this moment in time. Let's see how things are working. Let's see how things play out. And you don't have to have an answer, and that's difficult.
That's difficult
for some of us.
For you. Yes, because you want to know, you want to be on. I get that. I mean,
when you work in events and you always have a to-do list that is as long as your arm, when you don't have events, we aren't having events this year, so they're all postponed to next year. So we've had some virtual events; those have gone well. But it gives you time to think about things, and it makes you realize that patience and not rushing every decision often the way to go.
That's so good. It's so good. But we probably wouldn't have discovered some of these things if this hadn't happened, right?
Yep. And I think for events, it's actually helped us redefine our entire business, because just like travel, just like, again, table serve restaurants, we had to figure out an entirely new product line, an entirely new way of doing things. And we did it really fast. So there were some fast decisions to be taken. Like, let's not have events, obviously. Let's try this virtual thing. Our virtual events, we've had 15,000 people online at one time. Like, it's been phenomenal. And there's a lot you can do in an online world that you can't do in the physical. But right now we're just trying to figure out how do those two go together, because hopefully in the future we will be able to see each other again in the flesh. But trying to bring together the new product lines with our traditional business, it's not an easy thing to figure out. So we're working on it.
So what has been your that may be the answer, your greatest challenge in all of this, whether it was the work from home or the hybrid situation that you have right now?
Well, selling, as I'd say, the biggest challenge is obviously anyone that's in the commercial space or the marketing space, when consumer confidence is this low and when there's so many unknowns, just figuring out how to sell again. It's a totally different sales process. It's a totally, I mean, not totally different, I shouldn't exaggerate it, but you have to sell and market very differently when things are like how they are now.
Yeah.
You have to really get back to the basics. What is the thing that you need the most, and how can I help? I mean, I know that should always be, all sales process should be like that, but it's not. It gets a little complicated, and you don't get down to the basics with the customer. So now there's nothing left but the basics. We have to figure out, what do you need? What can we provide? And a lot of them don't even know what they need, so you can build it together, I guess, is the good thing.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more about trust. More than ever, it's less about salesmanship and more about a very honest conversation about how two companies can keep each other in business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really kind of, you know, it's just kind of a reminder of, like you said, getting back to basics. And people don't buy from companies, people buy from people, you know. I always say this, and you know, you've probably heard me say it a few thousand times, but people, you know, buy from people they know, like, and trust. And it always comes back to that. People follow leaders they know, like, and trust. And you know, I think it's more important that you build that relationship first. And you know, you probably heard us say this, but you know, that old South Louisiana, how's your mama and them, you know, just checking in like you and I have been doing, just how's your family, how's everybody doing, and not for any other reason than because I care, you know. And you know, we're all just need to just kind of get back to those basics. What do you feel like will be some of the greatest opportunities coming out of this?
To me, I think the greatest opportunity coming out of this is that you have teams that are going to have to trust each other more than ever. Customers have to trust us. We have to start at the very basics, but it's also happening within the team. Like I was thinking earlier, how amazing it is that 6 of us were around a conference table. That requires a lot of trust these days, more than normal, to say, I'm not healthy, I'm not well, I'm not going to go in, I just had an antibody test, it's like a completely different level of trust that the team has to have with one another. And I think the opportunity there is when you have that as your base. I mean, you don't have a limit, you know. If you have a team that's operating with complete trust, it's just, you're so much more creative. You have more interesting conversations. You help each other. You chip in. Again, as so many people have been laid off, people are having to do a lot more work for one another. So the workloads are heavier. But I think with that, the trust is also increasing. So I think that's the opportunity. It's more of an emotional opportunity. I haven't figured out the business part yet.
Yeah. No, but I think that will come, you know. I mean, the team that trusts one another is going to be willing to disagree, you know, when that conversation needs to happen. They'll be able to have that productive conflict, which is going to give you a better end result in the long run.
Well, actually, I think was it you that got me to read Speed of Trust? Yes. I can't remember. But I've been thinking about it constantly, because we're getting you have teams that trust each other. And then when you have layoffs and when you have health issues and when you have a global pandemic, the level of trust that we have to have with one another now is like, it's life and death. It's business survival or not. It's really, that's the opportunity, I think, is that we all look at work differently. We look at each other differently, and it's basic. It's the basics we got to get through.
It's human to human, you know, it's not business to business, it's person to person. I think that's so good. And yes, we talked about speed of trust, and we talked about a lot of about trust with Patton and Choney's books, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And we work through that process where trust is at the foundation of the pyramid. And for a team, if you don't have trust, you don't have accountability, you don't have creativity, you don't have any of those things. I mean, conflict gets a bad rap, but we want to have conflict as long as it's productive. So it's about the issue, it's not personal. And the more you build trust, the more people are going to be willing to do that instead of just going along to get along, you know.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with you. I think this is, during this time of work from home, for people especially who had not been working from home, you got to see a little bit more about the person. And, you know, maybe the kid walked through the room, or the dog, or the spouse, or whatever. Hopefully there were no like embarrassing Zoom moments. But, you know, I've been joking about my quarantine hair and stuff like that. But, you know, we kind of just get to know one another on a more personal level. And that helps you to understand where that person might be coming from at times when they're stressed out, or, you know, things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most basic. When we're talking about basics, there were Zoom calls in mid-April where we looked like completely different human beings. And we were just, there were no, you know, there just was no false activity there. We were really wide open and all scared and all nervous. And now, you know, hopefully we're going to come out of it, hopefully, as companies that are more real with one another.
I think that is a big positive and a big opportunity. And I think that would be good if that comes from all of this. What have you maybe adopted, started, experienced during this whole time that you'd like to pull forward as we eventually reopen and go back to work, whatever that looks like?
There's a lot of stuff that I don't want to pull forward.
Yeah.
I think that in terms of what I would like to bring forward, again, it's just that open conversation with one another. It's not even conflict anymore, in a way, when you're in this environment.
Yeah.
Because it is what it is. And you're talking about something so real, business survival, events, not having them. Our first event this fall was meant to be in Phoenix. Well, you know how that's going. So it's just, I mean, I think that's the part is, I understand you're always like, deal with healthy conflict. It doesn't even feel like conflict anymore. You're just dealing with the reality of something. You don't even worry about the politics or the conflict anymore. That's one thing I'd like to bring forward, is the lack of office politics when you're dealing with something like this, because it's just, we all have the same problem right now.
Yes.
All of us. It doesn't matter if you're selling food and beverage or if you're selling cars. We all have the same problem right now. I mean, the only people that have benefited probably are going to be if they come up with a vaccine, and then the hand sanitizer people are obviously very wealthy, but the rest of us are dealing with the exact same problem.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have taken more time. I wish there was more. I'm glad you're doing this, because it would be great if there were more learnings out there from this time. because we're all dealing with the same thing across disciplines.
Yes.
And I don't feel like I've gotten to speak with other business leaders that much, other than like, how are you doing? And are you still having events? It hasn't been like, how are you managing this process?
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think we can learn from each other. I really do. I'm a big believer in that. I like bringing together people from different industries. I like the idea of it, because we seemingly have nothing in common, and yet we have everything in common. And
especially right now,
we're dealing with this. It's a universal issue. And so, like you said, that the office politics, bye-bye, and that won't break my heart one bit. And then, kind of the hyper professionalism, if that was ever a thing for some companies, I just think that it's so unnecessary. As long as you're, as a recovering HR director, I always hated dealing with the people that wanted to wear revealing halter tops to work or something like that. But other than that, who cares? As long as it's not totally inappropriate, a lot of those facades are going away. And
and I think another thing to pull forward, just while you were saying that, is I think people's work-life balance was more accepted when everybody was working at home.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us didn't have as much work to do because we didn't have product lines. People, they took the time to breathe a little bit. Comexposium really encouraged taking your vacation time because it was a downtime and we didn't know what we were doing. So I think that's a bring forward, is like, we're going to have more of a balance because people are going to have to take care of their kids.
We will.
This fall and in the future, not just because of that, but.
Yeah. And there's a lot more grace. People are willing to give more grace when people need to see about their families. I know people are taking care of elderly relatives, people are taking care of kids, people are taking care of neighbors and chipping in and stuff like that. And I think that's a good thing, that, a lot of people have said, well, we're enjoying having supper or dinner together as a family, or we're going for walks in the evenings, or those kinds of things. And then other people have said, and it's not that they necessarily have a ton of time in their hands, but it's kind of a different headspace where, they're just kind of slowing down a little bit. And my thing is, I know we talk about work-life balance, and I always kind of scratch my head about that. I call it work-life integration, because it's like, I like that concept and the idea of, you're going to be off balance. When y'all are putting on it, when you've got an event this coming week, you're going to be like way off balance, blowing and going, working, right? And then there are going to be times when you're going to be off balance in favor of family. And maybe that's as it should be. I don't know. But it's about just being intentional about it. And what I think I am not going to miss is the hamster wheel, and having the time to be more intentional and saying, how do I want to work and lead? How do I want to show up for people? And being just conscious and aware, and then setting myself up to follow through on that. So it's really interesting. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me. Thank you so much. I'm now going to ask you a question. How are you reimagining what's next? Pop a response below so we can continue the conversation. Be sure to hit subscribe so you can get more inspiration and insights from these smart, savvy, and sometimes sassy women leaders.